Well, welcome Governor Schwarzenegger to this beautiful boat. Sits out here in Alameda with such great history, and I want to echo Andy Ball's comments about in his introduction of you, what a wonderful job you're doing and the history you're making in the great state. We have some serious business to attend to in the questions, but before I start, do you have anything, if you have anything you'd like to say, it's your
Well, no, I just want to say thank you very much for having me here. It's always great to speak to the Bay Area Council, and this is not the first time I've spoken to you, and I always love coming back, and I always say I'll be back every time I leave. And I want to thank you, Jim, for doing this little interview here, and it's great also to see Willie Brown, who has been a historic figure in politics in California and I think in the United States, and he has been extremely helpful. Just want to mention that also in my administration. He has served in a transition team and has helped me and advised me in many different issues. He's really a wonderful man, and also kind of sees both sides, Democratic and Republican side, even though he's a Democrat, but he has had a great relationship with Pete Wilson and got a lot of things done under his leadership, so we really appreciate all the great contributions that Willie Brown has made to California. Let's give him a big hand. He's still standing over there.
So we have some important policy questions to attend to. So let me start off with the most important questions. In the most important question in your career, Governor, you've been in contact with a lot of important people in special places. So I think what we really need to know is, between Hollywood and Sacramento and Muscle Beach, who's got the biggest egos?
I think none of those three. I think probably the Kennedys have the biggest egos. But I think that I think that probably the egos are everywhere. I mean, I think if you want to be the greatest in anything, if you want to be the greatest in bodybuilding, you have to have a big ego. I think if you want to be really great in show business, you have to have a big ego. And I think if you want to be really good in politics, you have to have a big ego. I think so. It makes no difference. If you want to be great in anything, you have to have a big ego.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Doesn't apply to business leaders, but everybody else, I think.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Of course not the business community.
Yeah.
No.
You know, Sacramento's an interesting place, and it's known, there's a lot of institutional players and organizations up there that have a lot of clout. We're the business community here, and since we really drive the economy of the state of California, we think we should be the most influential player. Sometimes we suspect maybe we're not. Who do you think is the most influential group or groups that you've dealt with up since you become governor?
Well, I hope that it's the people of California, really, in the end, that have the most power in California. I think that, I always said that I'm the people's governor, and I think it's very important when you are an elected official that you are not a party servant, but that you're a public servant, that you serve all people. So it's important, even though I'm elected and I'm a Republican, but I have to serve all people, Democrats, Republicans, decline the state, independents, everybody. I think that's the important thing, and that I have to listen to the people and listen to the input. And I think that's very important, and this is why, for instance, right now where the budget has become a big issue in California, because we have a $16 to $17 billion deficit. So it's going to be a very tough year to balance the budget. And so I've been traveling up and down the state to reach out to the people and to talk to them, to the business leaders and to elected leaders, local leaders, community leaders, and everybody in the education field, business field, and so on, and to talk to them about the difficulties of the budget and what our thinking is, why we have proposed the budget that we have proposed, why it is very important to make the changes that are necessary to change the budget system and all this, and have them be able to ask questions back. And that's what we did when we promoted the infrastructure. As you remember, we traveled up and down the state to explain to people that for 40 years California has not built the roads that we need, the schools, the universities, expanding the universities, fixing our levees, or creating more affordable housing, and all of those things need to be done. And the people slowly, even though the poll numbers showed 32% only were interested in it in the beginning, but in the end, overwhelmingly all of those initiatives passed. Some of them even with over 80% of votes. So I think it's very important to make the people the most powerful, because those are the votes that you need in order to get things done. And it's also the people that I always ask, help me accomplish our agenda. Get in touch with your legislative leaders or with your legislators and push them. And then that has an impact always. And also when we, for instance, gather signatures, like right now, we're gathering signatures for redistricting. For a year and a half, we've been negotiating redistricting in Sacramento, and it is almost impossible for the legislators to go there and to do redistricting without them being involved, because we don't want to have the legislators redistrict, because then there's a conflict of interest. They've done that the last time, and that has been disastrous since then. It has created people in the Republican side way to the right, and in the Democratic side way to the left, and they can't get along. They can't come together and compromise in Sacramento. And so this is why it's important now to gather the signatures. And again, it's the power of the people that give us the signatures, and that would then bring them to the table in Sacramento, or we will put it in on the ballot and let the people vote on it. So I think the people's power is really the most important power in Sacramento.
I think we all appreciate your efforts on redistricting. It's time has come to get a more balanced legislature, fairly duly elected by the people. Yeah, back on infrastructure, and we all appreciate your leadership, and we're pleased to follow it to get those bonds passed and start reinvesting in the state, as well as on the budget. In your State of the State message this year, you spoke about performance-based infrastructure, public-private partnerships, bringing private finance to the table in solving government problems and furthering our infrastructure investment. How is that going, and what's your plan to get that through?
Well, first of all, let me just say that it is amazing that for 40 years, for 4 decades, this state has not really built the infrastructure that we need. So we have fallen behind, so much so that the $42 billion of infrastructure bonds that the people have approved is really literally just the foot in the door. And this is why I said in my State of the State, what we really need in the next 20 years to catch up, we need $500 billion of infrastructure. And the only way we can get that done is through public-private partnerships. And it is very important that, for instance, that we go and think about, for instance, water infrastructure. As you know, that we have had one drought, and we had to have rationing in some places in California already, water rationing, and also the prices of water went up. And it is, I think, extremely important that we create more above the ground and below the ground water storage, that we fix the delta once and for all in its ecosystem, and that we also build a water delivery system, because it's very important to deliver the water also. And I think all of this can be done, but we need to have the Democrats and Republicans again to come together. They're negotiating right now. So I have great hopes after having seen what they've accomplished in 2006 and in 2007, when they did also the prison reform and made a commitment of almost $8 billion to expand our prison system and to build 53,000 new beds. I think that they can also do the water thing, and also to make come to an agreement in building more courts, because we are short of courts. People have to wait for trials for too long. But all of this stuff has been fallen behind for too long. And just to show you how important water is, I mean, if you think about that, a gallon of gasoline costs $4 now, close to $4. Well, a gallon of Avion costs $7. So it just shows you how important really water is and how the price of water has gone up. And that we really have to take care of that, and not only for the next 10 or 15 years, but to think about 50 or 100 years ahead, because we have to think that far ahead. Because if we now make a commitment to build the water infrastructure, it would take 20 years to build, and by that time we will have a population of 45 to 50 million people.
Yeah, and clearly with global warming and a faster snowmelt, we won't have the reservoir capacity in the state to hold the water that flows off early in the season. But one of the things we notice, and we've been working on this issue quite a bit, is that it's having a tendency maybe now to bring different parts of the state, the north, the south, the Central Valley, together for a solution. As you go around in your travels as governor, do you find that you're able to bring people together more and more over issues like this, which have historically kept people apart?
Well, I think that the most important thing is to let people know there's something in there for everybody. You can never go to Sacramento and you go and try to ask people to pass certain infrastructure bonds and not have something in there for them too. So every mayor, like for instance when we did transportation infrastructure or schools or whatever it is, affordable housing, every mayor in this state was able to say to their voters that there's something in there for our city. There's something in there for locally, for our community. And that's what we want to do also with water. If it is regional water storage facilities, if it is cleaning the water all over the state of California, building the delivery system, all of those things, we have to think about every single part in California so everyone can benefit, because that's how you then bring people together, and that's how you in the end get the vote for the initiative.
Well, the speaker we had first on today was Janet Yellen, the president of the Federal Reserve, and not unpredictably, the remarks she had about where the economy is it's not so bright. We've got some trouble spots. Early on, when you were first elected, you led a major reform of workers' compensation, which our members tell us has saved them a lot of money, and it's made California more attractive, again, to keep and retain jobs and bring jobs. What other kinds of things do you think could be done in the short or medium term to make California more attractive for employers and grow the economy? Which industries? How do you think we can do that?
Well, first of all, I think that you're right with the workers' compensation reform. That had a tremendous impact on our businesses, because when I was campaigning in 2003, it was the most common thing that I've heard from businesses, that they get killed with the workers' comp costs, that there were increases, double-digit increases, kind of the things that we experience now in healthcare in a way, and that they needed reform, and no one was willing really to reform the system. And so I promised them that the first year when I come in, I will do that. And again, we went out to collect the signatures, because we knew that it would be very tough to negotiate, especially with John Burton, who was in charge of the negotiations. And he was, a wonderful man, but a tough cookie and a tough negotiator. And so we negotiated, and we got almost everything that we needed in order to have total reform of the system. But there was 2 points left, I remember. And only when we had the 1.2 million signatures, and we put it on the desk in front of him, he then would sign off on those 2 points, and we then had an agreement on workers' compensation reform. And because of that, we have seen now the costs of workers' comp drop by 63% average in the state of California. So that made our state really much more competitive, and that meant that we were giving back $24 billion to businesses altogether since the beginning, since 4 years ago to now. $24 billion went back to businesses. That's exactly what we need to do in order to stimulate the economy, because what did businesses do with that? Businesses took that money and they expanded businesses, they hired more people, so all of that stimulates the economy. They bought more machinery and equipment and all of those things, so it stimulated the economy, and I think it was very helpful. What we have to do is we have to always think in Sacramento about how do we assist businesses to make it easier to do business, to make it less expensive to do business, because it's already by nature very expensive to do business in California, because properties are very expensive, services are very expensive, electricity is more expensive, water is more expensive. And so I think that we have to do everything we can to assist businesses to do business here. And I think that getting rid of some of the regulations, I think, is the most important thing, and also to changing some of the laws so that people don't get sued, so businesses don't get sued because someone is have not taken the lunch break at the right time or something like this. This is an abuse of the law, and it is absolutely insane, and the small businesses are suffering because of that. So we have to kind of negotiate all that and make certain changes to make it easier to do business here.
Sure. You've brought the concept of postpartisanship to the forefront, and it was interesting for us to work as one of the lead organizations in favor of AB 32 to address global warming and greenhouse gases. We talked about that earlier today, and you were a big supporter of that and drove that through as a great accomplishment. At the same time, you've been forceful on regulatory reform and these changes to help business and stimulate the economy, maybe historically more seen with the Republican Party. What's your experience in Sacramento dealing with both parties seemingly coming straight down the middle?
Well, I think that when it comes to the environment, I think California is probably the #1 place in the United States and maybe even in the world when it comes to their interest in cleaning the environment, cleaning the air, cleaning the water, and having a healthy environment and fighting global warming. And so it was, I think, a great experience for me to negotiate with the Democrats and with the environmentalists AB 32, to make a commitment to roll back our greenhouse gases to the 1990 level, which is a reduction of 25%, and additional 80% reduction by the year 2050. So that, of course, gave us, a lot of, worldwide attention. Even though when you look at the globe, we are just a little spot on the globe, but I think when it comes to the power of influence that we have on other countries and on the rest of the world, we're an equivalent of a continent, really. And I think that also the low-carbon fuel standards had that same impact. So I think those are kind of things that are very important. And it's important to know that even though there is this misconception that businesses against fighting global warming and the reduction of greenhouse gases, and Republicans against it, but all of that is changing. We see more and more businesses are now understanding that you can protect the environment and also protect the economy simultaneously. As a matter of fact, all this has created green, clean technology. And we are forcing the car industry to change, and that again creates new business. And so we have seen an increase in venture capital coming into California because of green, clean technology. It's a booming industry. And so I think that more and more will accept the fact that you can do both. And I think the important thing is also to know that there's many times, environmental extremists that sometimes hold up the process. So you're trying to go, for instance, to reach a goal of 20% of renewables by the year 2010. But then you have everyone offering to build the solar plants out there in the Mojave Desert, but then you cannot get the power lines, the transmission lines, to get it on the grid, because there it gets held up, by certain extremists that say, well, you can't go through this forest, or you can't go through this land, and all those things. So sometimes, it's environmental hurdles that stop you from creating your kind of environmental goals that you're setting for yourself. So I think that those are the challenges, but we're combing through these challenges. The key thing is always to bring Democrats and Republicans together when you have these negotiations. Business leaders and environmental leaders, bring them together, and we have been very successful in that. And I think that, I'm giving a speech on Friday, which is Earth Day, at Yale University about the environment. And, we are going to, as a state, push forward because we started alone. And now we have formed partnerships with many other Western states, with northeastern states, with southern states, with Canadian provinces, and with European nations. And so I think we are going to continue on because we know that Washington is asleep at the wheel. We cannot count on that administration to move forward, even though President Bush is going to give a speech today about the environment and all his scores he's going to have and all this. But I think when it comes to that issue, they have been not aggressive enough.
And certainly here in the Bay Area, we believe that this could stimulate a new economy for this region. We want to be the leaders in the world in helping to address global warming. We've talked to our friends in China about it. They seem to be very interested in our help. And so there's tremendous economic potential, we think, for us. I want to move off policy.
There's a few cards that he wants to give you of interesting questions that the people have.
I'll ask you this one.
I'm looking forward to that.
Probably better question
I can see already the first question. Are you still pumping up every day, Arnold?
Yeah.
Yes, I am. Anyway, go ahead.
A personal question, because I do think our audience wants to, they want to know some things about you. We've had some famous actors take on big political roles in the past, but truthfully, we've never had, maybe the most famous actor in the world take on a role like Governor of California. And it's had to be a big switch in your lifestyle. And I think a lot of people wonder, what's that like for you? How have you found it over the years? And is it something that you'd like to keep doing?
Well, I have had really the greatest experience, I tell you. And I think it is because I was ready to take on a challenge like that. I maybe would not have been ready 10 years ago, 20 years ago, but I was ready when I did it. And, I've spent 25 years in show business, and I felt like it was time for me to move on and to do something else. And when I think about that everything that I have accomplished in this country is because of California. I mean, California has received me with open arms as an immigrant. And I came over here with absolutely nothing, and everything that I accomplished is because of California. So for me to give something back and to work now as a public servant, I think is a great pleasure for me. It's something that I've learned also from my in-laws. As you know, Sergeant Schreiber, my father-in-law, who started the Peace Corps and the Legal Aid to the Poor and the Job Corps and Vista and all those different programs. He is, for all these years that I've known him, he has always talked about public service, about giving something back to the community, that this is where the action is. And, I took that very seriously. I think that he was absolutely right, and his wife, Eunice Kennedy Shriver, who has started the Special Olympics, is also a great role model for me. And so over the last 30 years, I've seen so many people around me, especially also, in a whole Kennedy family, you see everyone is involved in public service notice, even though we don't agree politically on things. But just the idea of going out and reaching out and helping people, I think it's fantastic. And I think that each and every one of us has to do that. And so it has been a great experience for me. It's a learning experience. I feel like a sponge that is absorbing information every day, and I'm learning, and I'm surrounded by great people and learn from Democrats and Republicans in Sacramento and have created great relationships. And, to move the state forward is something that brings me great joy, to get up every morning and to ask myself, what can I do for the people of California?
So you have a wonderful, yeah.
But I just want to also add that I couldn't do this job without having such an unbelievable First Lady. I tell you that my wife has been such a great partner from day one when we met. I mean, even way back then, I was involved in bodybuilding competitions still. And she got into that and helped me and pushed me and inspired me. Then in show business, she read all the scripts and met with the directors and the producers. It was really like a team effort. And the same is also when I ran. I knew that she was not for it. She hated the idea of me running because she felt like, she grew up with that and she had a bad experience growing up with with being in the public eye all the time and how it invades your privacy and all of those kind of things. So she felt reluctant about it, but in the end, she agreed to jump in and to be a partner, and she was a great partner. Without her, would have not won. And so she has been an extraordinary partner, an extraordinary First Lady, and very helpful in every step of the way. So, I love my wife because she has been really extraordinary as a wife and as a partner in this endeavor here.
You're very lucky. Has there ever been an issue where you and she really disagreed about something, not on a personal level, but on a policy issue where that created a conflict for you?
It happens, like for instance, when I drive up on my driveway and all of a sudden I see an Obama sign in front of my house. You say to yourself, well, wait a minute, when did that happen? What happened here with the team playing? Aren't we a team? And then all of a sudden my wife said, oh, he is so cool. I said, what? I said, you got to vote for McCain, Maria. Come on now. He says, no, I'm giving a speech tomorrow and endorse Obama officially. I said, oh, oy vey. But anyway, so yes, there are disagreements like that, but they are all kind of like, we never argue about any of that. Because I feel like it's like, your wife likes a white car and you maybe like a red car. What is there to argue over? That's what I like, that's what she likes, end of story. And so I support her in her supporting Obama, and she appreciates that I have my idea, and this is McCain, and this is how we move forward together. So it doesn't matter who gets elected, we are in.
I don't argue with my wife either, right, Heather? Because I can't win. So I work with the program. Couple of questions from the audience. I think first one's a key question facing any governor of the state, but maybe most important at this time. How do we fix the education system in California?
Well, I think the most important thing is that we have to fix first our budget system, because I think that you see people protesting all over the state about the budget situation, that we had to make cuts in education and all of those kind of things. But I cannot promise anyone more money than we have. We have $96 billion this year. We have next fiscal year, maybe $100 billion. And our spending requires us to spend $112 billion. We don't have $112 billion. So, so it is very difficult to really move forward the agenda of education or sometimes of prison reform and law enforcement and fighting gangs and all this when they don't have reliable source of revenues. And our budget system has been so terrible that we in Sacramento for decades have always spent all the money that came in. So if you have a surge in revenues of 23% like in 1999, all of that money was spent, only to find out that next year there was a downturn economically and they didn't have enough money. And so they have done this over and over, decade after decade. And the first thing they do is when they then run out of money, instead of putting a rainy day fund aside or a revenue stabilization fund aside, they spend it all, and so now we are in a situation where we are short of revenues, and therefore we have to make a lot of cuts in the different programs. So hopefully the Democrats and Republicans will get together within the next few weeks and start negotiating that, so we can come up with a good compromise so we don't have to make some of those cuts, and that we can really reform the budget system in such a way that this never happens again. Because it is irresponsible that we take our children and our education system on a roller coaster ride like this, where we 1 year overfund, like right now, this year we are overfunding by over $1 billion education, and next year we are taking away $4 billion from education. This is a roller coaster ride, it's irresponsible, and what we have to do is we have to create stability by reforming the budget system so we can really plan, and the education community can plan, and everyone. So we are working together right now with the education community to come up with a way, because they're part of that budget reform since Proposition 98 is part of it. So we are trying to work together to try to solve that. So this is a very important period, the next few weeks, in order to resolve this issue.
Critical for us here in the region, because we're a knowledge-based area, and we're so dependent upon the system at all levels to churn out smart people for the smart jobs. High-speed rail, headed for the November ballot. What do you think about it? Does it, what will it take to make that happen for California?
Well, I think that most people are in agreement that we need high-speed rail. I think that it is extremely important that we have an alternative rather than flying, to get from north to south and inland and to the Central Valley and all this. I think that there will be something on the ballot this fall. I think that this is a perfect example of public-private partnership, because we have $10 billion set aside for that, but then we need $40 billion really on the end to get it done. But I think this is where the future is. I've traveled all over the world, and I've ridden on those high-speed rails, if it is in China, if it's in Japan, if it is in France, in all of those places. They are highly successful, and I think it could be a huge hit for us, because we don't have enough room anymore to expand our airports, and there is so much demand for people to get around California. So I think that how fast we move people and goods around the state, this is economic power, and this is why I think this is a big part of that, is high-speed rail.
Thank you. One of the questions is, you've made some statements about the United States Constitution preventing a foreigner from running for president. So if the Constitution were changed, would you run for president? Another question, the California Constitution has a term limit provision, so you can't run again for governor, but that could be changed on a vote of the people. You didn't really get to go for the full 2 terms. Have you ever thought about going to the people and asking for another 4-year term to continue the job here? So president, continue on as governor, go back, make more movies, do something else. What's Arnold's future?
First of all, no, I have not thought about that, nor do I have an interest to extend the term limits for governor. I think that this is something someone else can think about. And the same is also with the Constitution. I think that it will never happen while I'm around, because as long as there's a candidate or a potential candidate around, the other party will always be against it. So I think it will never get done. I think if no one is around and that subject comes up, it has a better chance of passing, so that eventually foreign-born citizens can run for president. But I think at this point, I think it will not happen. And, I'm perfectly fine with that, because this is the only thing that I can't do. I mean, think about all of the things I was able to do by coming to America. I've had endless opportunities, and like I said earlier, that everything that I've accomplished is because of America. So if this is the only thing that I can't do, I'm not going to schwitz over it, trust me. I mean, I'm going to be perfectly fine with that and going to continue on being a public servant afterwards in some other capacity. And, there's so many things we can do to improve your community and to improve your state and your country and the world without running for an office. My mother-in-law was a perfect example of that. She never ran for office, and look what impact she had. Now Special Olympics being in 164 countries. And it's a huge organization in helping so many people.
It looks like we're running out of time, and I've got a lot of really good questions, so you'll have to come back next year. So I'll ask one more.
I'll be back.
Yeah, you better. We expect you. We'll be ready for you. What's the one piece of advice you would give to someone who, like you, has had a successful, high-profile private career and makes a leap directly into a high-level public office?
What's the recommendation?
Yeah, how would you advise someone who's in a non-government career who, like you, suddenly goes into a high role in the government? What have you learned that you would impart to someone else who does that in the future?
I think that the most important thing is that you do it organically. That means that it is in your heart, in your gut. You got to feel inside of you, not I want to be a politician or I want to run for office, but you got to feel, first of all, I want to help people. That need has to be in you. And if that is not there, forget about it. You got to have that, because that's what brings the joy, no matter what the struggle is. Because being in the job, there are a lot of struggles. There are lots of ups and downs. There's a lot of times you get the beating, because you can never please everybody. That's just part of it. But that's okay. Because, to me, that's okay, because I feel like so good about just being able to do a job for the people of California and to do the best job possible. So I think that's the important thing. But the other thing is that what you have to learn very quickly is that things are not going as quickly as in the private sector. Because there's a lot of obstacles. And you have 120 partners in the Capitol. They're all so brilliant. Democrats and Republicans, that when you come up with an idea, they all of a sudden have much better ideas. And so you have to negotiate, and and so this takes all time and all of this stuff. But you get used to that. I was very impatient in the beginning, and sometimes even got personal about it. And that was the wrong approach. I learned that you got to pull back. And that's just the way it is in public life, that you have to, bring everyone together, that it's not you alone that is running the state, even though this is what you wish you could do for a year or two, but that's not the reality. The reality is that 120 legislators are your partners, and you have to reach out to them and make them your partners and bring them in and communicate with them in a proper way so that they buy into your ideas, and that you have to reach out to the people, to the 38 million people in California, and bring them also in. So it is a slower process, but it's a great process, it's the right process. And so I think this is one thing that one has to adjust to very quickly, that it's not like in the private sector where you sit down in your boardroom and you make some decisions together and you move forward. It takes longer than that. As you can see, just with redistricting, we've negotiated now a year and a half, and the legislators still haven't done it. And even though the speaker yesterday has made some announcement that he's going to go and do that with term limits and campaign finance reform and those things, but I believe it when I see it. In the meantime, we're going to continue on gathering our signatures and go and put ours on the ballot, because ours has the endorsement of Common Cause and of the Chamber. They have the AARP and all kinds of Leon Panetta's organization and so on. So it's a wonderful thing where everyone came together, and we're putting it on the ballot, because I think redistricting is extremely important for the state of California, so that we get more done for the people of California.
Well, our executive committee meets on Friday, and we're going to endorse. I think they're going to endorse the measure, and I think it's something that many of them feel strongly about. Governor, I think I can say the members of the Bay Area Council are very appreciative of you spending your time with us and the work you're doing on behalf of all of us in this wonderful state. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to working with you on many of these issues. And I think our chairman, Mr. Ball, has a little something to present on behalf of the Hornet to you, so you remember this sacred event.
Absolutely. On behalf of the USS Hornet and the Bay Area Council, we'd like to give you a commemorative jacket. It's a size XXXL for you, to thank you for coming here today. So great comments. Appreciate it. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Governor. Thanks very much. Great. Thank you.